Very quick introduction about myself before we get started. I am Pavna Munishamappa, as Vinisha introduced, an SAP SuccessFactors HCM consultant. I've been working with SuccessFactors world for about 8 years now, and where my primary skill sets are around talent consulting or talent solutioning. So while heavily working with talent implementations projects from past couple of years. All right. So the agenda for today's meeting is going to be, before we jump into talent intelligence of implementation, we would like to set a context in terms of by introducing the success factors, talent intelligence hub, we're starting with the importance of skills marketplace, an overview of talent intelligence hub, and then showing your demo, showing it how a skills journey is going to look like for an employee within the success factors, and then talk about talent intelligence of implementation challenges or data building blocks and a skills strategy journey, and how TalenTeam skills enablement plan helps you to accelerate your journey. Well, at the end of the session, we have a Q&A session planned. So where you can post your questions, we will try to answer as many as we can. And we have our colleague, John Foster, who has joined, who would be taking the questions in the chat. All right, to get started with. So what are skills marketplace? Why are the skills marketplace gaining so much attraction today? So well, with the growing talent shortage, as per the report conducted by McKinsey, it's been estimated by that 85 millions of job goes unfilled due to the lack of skilled worker by 2030, which is really a massive number. And also in terms of a changing employees' expectation, as per the research conducted by LinkedIn, by 2024, LinkedIn 2024 Workforce Learning Report found that 95% of employees would stay longer in a company if it invested in career development. Well, last but not the least, the cost saving and efficiency. The traditional hiring process are expensive and time consuming, where according to SHRM, the average cost per hire is identified somewhere between £3,500 to £5,000, while an internal hire is significantly less expensive comparatively, and also comes with a quicker onboarding time. Well, the skill marketplace not just helps an organization to bridge the gap by identifying and developing the internal talent, but also provides the structured career path and an upskilling opportunities to an employee. So, well, before we get started with, let's get to know what is Talent Intelligence Hub then. Very simple words. Talent Intelligence Hub is what enables this skills journey within your organization. Well, Talent Intelligence Hub works on a conceptual or a whole self model, where this model tries to understand what are the skills and capabilities that an employee knows today on what an employee can do, not just limiting there, trying to understand what are the skills and capabilities that an employee is looking to develop, or what are their strengths and what are their preferences, what are their motivations. Well, by understanding the employee as a whole, with blending the opportunities with what really employee wants to do, with the opportunities that are available within the organization, brings in that, to the opportunities present within the system, thereby looking at increasing the retention and also to increasing the internal mobility factor. So now when we talk about Talent Intelligence Hub, there are 4 fundamental key areas that within the Talent Intelligence Hub. The first one is the attribute library. So this attribute library is effectively a database where you as an organization can hold the information that you expect or would like to collect within your organization. It could be a skill library or a competency data. And one of the fantastic thing about this attribute library is also an ability to create a custom, attributes within your organization, not just limiting to skills and competency. For instance, you can create language as one such attribute, and education, etc. And then the next one is in terms of the growth portfolio. So this is the end user view where as an employee can effectively manage the skills within the organization. Well, the skill inference is the next step where basically based on the AI, that artificial intelligence, there is a skill recommendations that would be recommended to an employee based on the data or activities or their preferences within the continuous performance management or within the growth portfolio. So trying to understand, in terms of the patterns or the data that is available within the success factors and try and recommends these skills to the employee. Last but not the least, in terms of the job profile builder, so this is the role architecture. So where you create the job roles and assign these skills and competencies to job roles, defining the expected proficiency required for a particular role. And if you could see here, the data within the Talent Intelligence Hub not just resides within the platform, but however, the data from the Talent Intelligence Hub flows across the various modules. It could be starting from recruiting to career and development, career and succession planning. So, well, I'm not going to talk in terms of the integration bit, but however, we're going to play a quick video in terms of seeing that how these skills would flow across the various modules within the success factors shortly. And also the data within the Talent Intelligence Hub, not just be available within the success factor. You can use the data of the skills or any other attribute to an external ERP systems for a better workforce planning. So now we have seen in this Talent Intelligence Hub not just helps an organization in terms of increasing the internal mobility, but also, helps an organization to have the diversified skills within the organization. Okay, so now what is that? Sorry about that. So what is this employee experience or a skills journey is going to look like from an employee? So we have seen that what are the values it adds from an organization standpoint, but what is the skills journey within the success factor is going to look like for an employee really? So I'm going to, play a quick video in terms of, I'm going to do a talk through. So where we're going to see how skills is going to help an organization to navigate through that journey. Well, for this particular, the video or a demo, we're going to use Sarah David, who is an employee, who is an external candidate trying to find a job within trying to find the right job. Okay, so well, here this is where this is the career site where Sarah is trying to find the right job for her based on the resume-based skills matching, helps a candidate to quickly identify the jobs that best fit their ability. By identifying the skills from the resume, the planning and scheduling manager is the role that's been suggested for Sarah. Sarah can go through this role details and apply for the job if it's a right fit. Well, Sarah applies for the job. As soon as the recruiter receives the candidate's application and can see the list of skills that has been matching for the required job role. As part of the recruitment process, it is identified that Jeff Hill or Sarah David are a right candidate during the interview processing, and then there is an interview scheduled for this candidate when during the interview the skills-based interview is been conducted and rated on each of the skill, and Sarah has been recommended or rated high as a potential candidate for a right fit for this job. Well, Sarah got the job. As soon as Sarah joins the organization as a planning and scheduling manager, based on her current roles, she can see the listed roles, skills, and her aspiration or her opportunities to grow even before her actual work journey begins. Well, Sarah is a very passionate or eager to succeed in her new role. She wants to know more about the skills and the areas of developments needed to work. Well, Sarah evaluates her current abilities against the skills requirement for a particular role, for her planning and scheduling manager role, and she can also identify the skills she's really interested about and assess herself. And also, Sarah identifies that she needs an improvement on a particular area. All she does is she creates the target goal by providing the target developmental goal details. And now, Sarah would like to upskill herself to bridge the gap that she has. She will identify adds the learning, would like to identify the right learning content to fill in that, skill gap that Sarah has, where she can see the list of, courses that is available for her to develop on this particular skill. So while Sarah adds this learning courses to her learning module and she completes the learning content and enhances her expertise. Well, Sarah is now equipped with the right insight, resources, and learning pathway to excel in her role and to drive her career forward. Sarah is a very passionate employee. She is very interested in senior project management role. So, well, when she clicks on this, senior project management role, she can see all the details that are available around this particular role. What is the, list of skills that she need to be good at? What are the attributes she need to be good at? Is there any skills that she's already worked on? She can create the developmental goal and also can see the career path where the senior project management role can take her from where to where. And now, based on the current skills, capabilities, roles, and aspirations, what employee really wants to do, depending on the data on the career, growth portfolio also, all the recommendations around whether it's a gig work opportunities or an assignment opportunities, whether it's a, job vacancy opportunities, or whether it's a learning opportunities to improve on a particular skill, or it could be, mentoring opportunity to work or improve on a particular activity or a particular area, or even the target role opportunities. All these opportunities are listed within the opportunity marketplace based on what really a candidate needs to do. Well, Sarah as a manager, Sarah can effectively oversee and develop her team skill using Talent Intelligence Hub. Sarah can access her team's current skill, allowing her to understand their strengths, and she can quickly identify if there is any skill gaps. With the visibility into skill gaps, Sarah can strategically upskill her team by evaluating the employee's skills and to set a developmental plans and assigning the learning resources to bridge the gap and to improve the team's capabilities. So in this way, from the time a candidate joins or applies for a job to joins the organization, this is how the skills journey is going to look like for an employee. All right. So now moving on to the next slide. So, well, we have seen how Talent Intelligence Hub adds the value from the organization standpoint and how the skills journey is going to look like, or how an employee can be in the driver's seat of his own career and start working or progressing through it. Well, transition into Talent Intelligence Hub comes, or becoming a skills-based organization comes with certain level of challenges, which we're going to see very shortly. As we progress through the presentation, we will also talk about how can you manage or mitigate these challenges. Okay, so now to begin with the challenges, so we have worked with number of customers starting their skills journey at the various points. Well, the challenges that we have identified are categorized at the strategy level and the data level. So these are some of the challenges that's been highlighted. Well, unlike the traditional SuccessFactors implementation, Talent Intelligence Hub projects are not really configuration heavy, but it's really heavy in terms of the data, which requires a robust skills data to drive a meaningful outcome. And now, the first challenge to begin or to get started with is the change management at the strategy level. So this is one of the major challenge where taking the business with you along by articulating the value of Talent Intelligence Hub to the business becomes a very challenging while you are running this project. Well, most of the times with our past experience, the HR really wants to drive this initiative through, but then they fail to engage the business effectively. That's when, you need to start working on having the better change management plans. And the next one is in terms of the skills rollout strategy. So how do you want to roll this skill strategy is about. So is that something you wanted to do, like a phase-wise approach, or for a pilot group of people you would like to launch the first, and then are you want to do a big bang approach? This is some of the challenges that which needs to be aligned with the business, and depending on a lot of internal challenges to ensure what is the right strategies to be rolled out to your organization. And now, moving on to the next strategic challenge, that is the skills modular integration strategy. So, well, depending on what is your organization's mission, vision of the organization, once you have your skills foundation or this talent intelligence hub enabled within your system, you need to integrate with the various other modules to bring in that value within the organization. So one of the challenge most of the time with this particular strategy, to having this modular integration, is that sometimes, to have this talent intelligence hub to work effectively, or to have this skills journey set up effectively, you need to have a right skills data. You need to have your role, architecture rightly placed within the system. That's so fundamental. Once you have that, you need to have this to be integrated across the various modules to see the visual value for an end user. But then most of the time when we get started with this journey, really, as an organization, the key thing is that, okay, as a first step, we need to ensure the skills are right. We need to ensure the architecture is right. But then when we roll this out as an end user, they feel that there isn't anything that's a value that it is driving, because, okay, now as an employee, I can say this is the skill I'm interested about. But what is that? What is next? So what happens next? I want to upskill myself, or I want to have the job opportunities recommended to me. So that's where you need to have a modular integration strategy. How do you have this communication plan internally to have this value? You need to, of course, integrate, but what is the right time for your organization to integrate? So the strategy becomes very important as well. And now, again, the next one, that is articulating the value. Again, this becomes very crucial element for this, making the project successful. It's not just in terms of having the technicality or a data available, but also driving this value with the projects, where convincing the business to progress through this skills journey by building the business case and to show the values to the organization to get the approval of the talent implementation project is one of the challenge as well. And also the other comes with, okay, once you have the project implemented, how do we articulate the value to the employees to bring in that skills-led culture within the organization is something that's a challenge. And now, moving on to the data aspects. So what is the challenges that an organization face from the data standpoint? So, well, the first and a very foremost or crucial challenge that is important is that organization not having an access to a skills data to begin these skills initiatives. So, well, where organization don't have a skill inventory to begin with. Even if the skills data exists within the organization today, to ensure how do we know is the skills are up to date as per the current market trends, and also for the changing technology today to gain the competitive advantages within the market. So where is there any skills that's been outdated with the changing technology, or how things are being handled now for a particular role? So that becomes important. This is where the organization most of the time struggle with. Now, moving on to other one, standardizing the skill naming. So this is one of the challenge when the multiple business units define the skills differently. For example, the same skill might be referred as, to pick one example, like project management in one department may be called as managing the projects in another, or maybe some other business unit might call it as effectively managing the project. So, well, though the names describe the same kind of a skills, but this inconsistency in a data affect the workforce planning and skills-based talent development. So this is again the important one to ensure that there is a skill standardization, so where it's been reviewed. Okay, so now moving on to the next one, too many skills mapped to a role. So mapping a skills to a role is an essential part of this talent intelligence sub-project. However, assigning too many skills to a role result in complexity in skill assessment, leading an employee to struggle with the self-assessment, and also manager have to struggle with finding or validating the skills because of this overwhelming number of skills list. So one example is that while we were working with some of our projects, it's been seen that some of the organization really had about 30 to 40 skills mapped to a role, right, which is really on a higher side. So imagine to get started with the skills journey, it's fine that an employee starts evaluating the current role, evaluating on all the 40 skills. But then as we progress, let's say the employee stays within the organization for about 3 years, there is a role change. Literally any skills added to their profile stays with them. So any change in role then adds up, the skills list, which means to say after 5 years with the changing roles, you might have about hundreds or 150 skills in your profile, for which is not the UI growth portfolio is really built for, right? So it becomes important to have this, to look at normalizing this skill and having this strategy for skills rating. So within the current system architecture, once you have the skills rating scale or a competency rating scales defined, you cannot modify the rating scale. When we say that, for instance, if you decide to use a 0 to 5 scale or a rating scale and used for skill evaluation, then you will not be able to change that to 1 to 5 scale. Well, to maintain that as per the current system architecture. However, to maintain the consistency, to ensure the ratings are aligned with the talent development or succession planning or across the success factors suite, to prevent any discrepancy, it's important, the ratings are consistent. And now, moving on to the next data challenge, that's the system readiness. Okay, now what is this system readiness or check tool? So this is the very first step that would be done. This is the first step that is handled before enabling the TH or before we kickstart the TH project, which is considered as one of the pre-migration step that is required. So running the check tool automatically detects if there is any configuration or a data issue related to a job profile builder or a job description manager or a center of capabilities. So these errors must be resolved before we enable the talent intelligence hub. And also the number of errors really depends on, the volume of data you have today. Some customers really have 10 errors, some might have 1,000 plus errors, which really makes a time consuming activities to clear this error. However, as a first step, even you can check what is the errors that you have, the number of errors you have today within your system starting. In fact, you can check right today by going to admin center to the check tool and filtering on criteria like job profile builder, job description manager, or center of capabilities to see the number of errors you have so that you can start working towards resolving those errors. So resolving these errors comes like, some of the errors you can resolve yourself by using the front end. However, you can also resolve this error. Some of the errors would require, support from the partner company because this need to be resolved from the provisioning. You can begin those journey of, check tool error clearing, even starting from today. So now, and also as part of the pre-migration system readiness, job profile builder need to be enabled as a prerequisite within this system. and then whether you maintain the job profile data at this point or not, but you need to have that, framework enabled within your system. And also this job profile builder need to be used within the recruitment management system. All right. So now moving to the next challenge, that's the crucial one when most of the projects that we see, that is the job role architecture. So organization, so one of the big challenges that we have most of the time see that organization has no job role architecture built or no job profile content. So even if the organization has the job role architecture, some of families and a roles and a job code association, it's also seen that for some of the customers, when you have the job frameworks, when it's been built, it's mostly considering the pay ranges rather than considering the element of talent management as well. So where in one of the such cases where what would happen is you might have same job code assigned to two different nature of job role. For example, in this case, if you could see here, like a service engineer and an AI engineer, which are the two different job titles, sharing the same job code or a job classification, which results in having the same skill set for service engineer or an AI engineer. So this is something, the challenge that you would face again as part of this talent intelligence of implementation project. All right. So now these are some of the challenges that we had identified during the projects and then wanted to talk about. So moving on to the next slide now. So the data building blocks. Okay, we have seen the challenges then. In that case, what is the building blocks that is essential to have a successful implementation of talent intelligence hub? The first one is having your job role architecture, where you need to have your job role, job code, and a job family that's been, architecture has been built. And at this point, you also need to ensure that you don't have same job codes mapped to two different nature of job roles. What you can really do is you can look into your existing job architecture in a system to identify is there anything of any of those job code overlap with the two different job roles, so that you can start working on creating a new job codes within the system for those roles. And now moving on to the next step is, once you have the architecture in place, that is the role details in place, the next step is the having your skill library. So when you do not have the skills data, it's always ideal or recommended to start with some of the critical skills that is important for your organizations. And remember that when the skills data is been received from the multiple business units or working on the skills data, we need to ensure that there isn't any redundant skills data, that is having the same skill names called with the different names, which means the same, to avoid any redundancy in the data. So and also another one to get the skill library is to purchase the skill library. So where TalenTeam also offers the skill library builder, so where you can in fact use the skill library data and assign where this library contains the skills data specific around the roles, your roles. So by using the standard skill libraries, you would also avoid any redundancy in the skills, and also standardizing the skill name would be the issue with standardizing skill names would be eliminated. And also the next step is in terms of mapping the skills with the job role. So to build that architecture or connection with the skills to a role, this is very important thing. So where you need to have a skills map to a role. This is where we define what is the expected proficiency level required for a particular role for the particular skill. And also in terms of ensuring the ideal number of skills to be mapped for a role is 15 to 25 to better manage or to make your skills more focused, or your learning more focused, the recommended is 15 to 25 skills per the role. So once you have this, job framework, that is, job roles and an architecture, and then you have a skills map to a job role, really you have the system ready to be integrated across the various areas of success factors. However, how do you want to roll it out? So that's again is something that you need to look at. So the recommended approach is to start small with 1 or 2 job families to do a pilot launch. So which provides you an opportunity to learn from the lessons and gradually start expanding on it. So once you have this architecture, so how do you integrate it? So what is that you need to look at? So basically, what are the modules that you need to first integrate? Of course, depends on the modules that you have within the success factors today. In addition to which, it's also in aligning with what is the objectives or a mission or vision that you're trying to achieve using the skills, skills journey. So depending on which, you need to prioritize the modules that you would like to integrate first, whether is it a learning integration with the skills, or let's say is this that you need use your career development is what is your mission to achieve. So depending on it, you can start integrating with. All right, so now moving on to the strategy journey point of view. So here, so regardless of where are you with your current skills journey, this is going to be on a high level skills journey from the start to the end. So where you can see that starting from an organization, it is important to start preparing for the skills journey really. And then developing an effective skills enablement plan. How do you want to enable it? So what is the considerations you're looking at? And next is to having the building your skills business case is very important, and then getting an internal approval. So and then establishing the strong skills foundation becomes very crucial. So TalenTeam also helps an organization with a skills enablement plan, an organization to create the business case, and also to talk about the values, and also to talk about the and also about how can you get the return on investment by using the skills journey and etc. So and then the next step comes is defining the job framework and architecture, where you have to standardize the job architecture. So these are the elements that has been considered as part of the technical enablement of the talent implementation, starting from defining the job architecture till enabling the right technology. So once you have the job architecture, that is, you have a job families, a job role, and a skills association, and then comes you have the creating of skills framework and a taxonomy, identifying how do you want to get these skills. Are we going to build these skills internally, or is it that are we going to purchase the skill library? And if so, what is the vendor? Are we purchasing it through TalenTeam or any external skills vendors available today in the market? So those are the things that you need to start looking at. And also in terms of you need to have those skills taxonomy by now, and then you need to have enabling the right technology. So having your job profiles enabled, or having your talent intelligence hub enabled. Integrating with your learning, it could be integrating with your performance management, career development planning, or an opportunity marketplace. So you need to enable the right technology to align with your business case, as well as in terms of with your what is that you're trying to achieve with the skills journey. So once you have this technology, once you have the data, that's not in term enough to have or make this project successful. This is where change management becomes very crucial, to bring in that skills first culture. So to ensuring that the employees are being the communication is done effectively to articulate the value of the skills to an employee, to increase the adoption, to bring in that skills skills cultured environment within the organization. And also when we look at the skills strategy journey, it should not only consider till we launch, but also in terms of the plan should be available. How do we sustain and optimize the skills operation in the future? How do we dynamically update the skills? Not just that we define the skills to a role today and then we look at the skills after 5 years, but then how do we dynamically update those? So this is what the plan or approach should go to. All right. So now moving on to the next one is our skills enablement plan. So here, this is the applications or the services that the talent team has really built or worked upon to accelerate your skills journey within your organization. So well, as part of the skills journey, talent team really started working towards the development to help an organization to accelerate their journey to become a skills-based organization. And how can company effectively define the skills, that is the right skills, specific and tailored to your role and to your organization? And what is the expected proficiency required for a particular role, which is a crucial element for both talent intelligence and job profile builder. So our first tool was to build the skill library builder service. This is the service that was built exactly to do the same, to get the skills specific around your job roles today. And now, as we started looking at, we realized that organization didn't have the job framework really, or a job profile generator. Sometimes when you have the job, the data related to job profiles or job role, it was available in an Excel or in terms of presentations and offline. So what we do really is, we took a step back to build the job profiles framework to our organization by processing whatever the data that is available within your organization today around your roles, and then defining those job framework architecture for you, considering your job families and job roles, and then, the job codes, considering the level of that particular role. Is it belongs to mid-level or senior level, and etc. And then the job profile content, the job profile generator. So this is the tool that's been built using the generative AI to generate the job profile content for your organization automatically. So well, this has been built to whether to create the job profile content from the scratch or to update the existing job profile content that's been required using this job profile builder generator service. Where one of the challenges that was seen and why we thought of, while we build this job profile generator was to ensure that, the job profile builder generator is really a huge task for an organization. It's really time consuming, which requires a lot of efforts. And even when an organization start building the job profiles, which takes months to years, it really used to get outdated. So this job profile, generator, what it really does is it generates you the data automatically. All you need to do is review and approve so that the data gets into your system successfully. And then also about the skill, learning skills tagger. So where by analyzing your existing learning content and associating those skills to the, skills to your learning contents as well, which would be done by using this learning content tagger service. So again, the skill assessment bit. So talking about, whenever we're assessing the skill, the major thing that an organization would like to eliminate is to avoid the potential bias. So what is the fair way of assessing a employee on a skills? Because there, in terms of how you rate or how do you see the proficiency, how do you rate depends also in terms of how do you see your personal, your personality would also reflect in terms of how do you understand the ratings and how do you, provide the ratings as well. So to bring in that, to avoid any potential bias that exists in terms of assessing the skills is when we introduce the, skill assessment, where bringing in the number of different types of assessment criteria. For instance, if somebody need to be rated in the scale of 1 to 3, we define a set of assignment questions using an AI, where these questions would be reviewed by you to approve. Of course, AI is great, but not always perfect, right? So that's when you also have a control in terms of seeing these interview questions, the assessment questions, and then confirm or review those questions or change if required. So once this is done, so you have an assessment criteria on which it has been assessed. Then the next is also in terms of whether you want somebody, an employee, to be rated in 4 to 5. What is the assessment criteria? Do you need an endorsement, or do you need some of the feedbacks that need to be received from your let's say from the SMEs or peers with whom you have really worked? So you can have the different types of assessment criteria that can be built or supported as part of the skill assessment to avoid any potential biases. And then the next one, the last one, is the startup hack. It's like we are the SuccessFactors implementation partners. So we're as part of the Startup Hack service, where we enable and implement the Talent Intelligence Hub or a job profile builder for you in terms of considering the lessons learned, in terms of the best practices and an approach. And then again, in terms of the skills enablement plan, we also, as I highlighted, we do support in terms of providing an organization support in terms of building an use case, and also in terms of knowing what is the return on investments and etc. and all those things. All right. So now, okay, this is what pretty much we wanted to cover. So which Vinisha has highlighted in terms of learning and skills forum at the start of this session. So this is what we really wanted to cover. Coming to the last areas or last thing of this session is in terms of the question and answers. Okay. Okay, so for everyone, if there is any questions in terms of the what we have walked through, or any questions around the skills, feel free to provide the put your comments within the chat so that we can answer for you.
Hi, Pavana. So yes, we've been getting lots of questions, so I've done my best to keep up. So I think we've answered 22, but if you want to take some live, I can hand over to you.
All right. Okay, I can see that the questions are answered. That's fine. Great, John. Thanks. Okay. All right. Okay, in terms of the questions, what we have received is regarding the skills data. What kind of data quality measures do you propose to ensure some wrong mapping, etc., in terms of the standards to follow for the Talent Intelligence Hub? Okay. So we have seen that most of your questions has been answered by John. Is there any other new questions? Okay, we're only seeing the one question is that we are only seeing the learning and the assignments and not the mentoring programs within the open jobs or open jobs. So basically I believe this is the question related to an opportunity marketplace. To have the the mentoring programs recommendations to be available in your opportunity marketplace, you need to, okay, I think is this been answered, I guess. Okay. Sorry, I think mostly every question is answered. I hope there isn't anything
Well,
that's
I think we have 15 open questions, Pavana.
Do you want to open the Q&A box, Pavna?
Yeah.
Feel free to answer them live, or you can also answer. You can type it out. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at these questions. Okay, there are 16 questions. So regarding the skills data and what kind of data quality measures do you propose to ensure some wrong mapping and etc.? Is there any standards to be followed? Okay, regarding the skills data. So well, in terms of analyzing when you're building the skills of, like, when you have getting the skills data offline, that is with the different business unit, the one thing is to ensure that there is a one consolidated area where all the data is been consolidated And then you start reviewing those data to ensure there isn't anything like, for instance, as we said, one of such criteria would be to check, is there any redundant skills listed within the system? For example, having the skills with a different name. And also in terms of having the wrong mapping and etc. So in terms of, wrong mapping and etc., well, the first thing to allow is always to check from the skills to see how relevant the skills are. The skills can be broadly categorized in terms of the nature of, is this skills that is something that you wanted to, is the skills important to do your day-to-day activities, for instance, or is it something that is skill that is occasionally called for a particular role? In this way, you can consider to see the relevancy of the particular, skill to role mapping. And okay, there has been referring on the limitations of growth portfolio and the number of skills supported in the intended build. What is referred by SAP as the intended number of linked per role, so that it would be a frame where customer need to be aware of over it. Okay, so in terms of currently, there isn't any particular number called in terms of the limitation as such for the role to skills mapping, but then as a recommended approach is to keep the skills 15 to 20, 25 some way, to have the skills managed more effectively within your system, because the too many skills also would lead to skills complexities, as we discussed in a call. Okay, and then is it wise to start with the simple skills for new employees or gradually add them up as we develop? This approach makes it easier for them to understand their role. Okay, we can build on their skill sets and introduce an additional competencies as we progress. Okay, when we talk about, the better approach would always be looking at the skills that is important for, the critical or crucial for a particular role, rather than starting from the, simple skill. The reason why when we talk about the data can never be called as complete, really. So it's of course an ongoing activity which you'll have to relook into it. Maybe the skills that's been added today might not be relevant after 5 years down the line. So for which it's also important that, to start with the critical skills for a particular role, and then with which of course you can look into adding the simple skills for the new joiners as well. Okay, so what are the attribute that is, attribute types example language beyond competencies and skills that other customers using within the Talent Intelligence Hub? How are they overcoming the challenges that attribute types are not currently available in the job profile builder and other functionalities? Okay, so well, I think this is one of the nice questions. So again, in terms of currently, most of the time, like whatever the, what we see the attribute or custom attribute that an organization is mostly looking at is the languages, considering that it's expected that education and qualifications are going to become a standard attribute at some point in the skills journey with the SAP's roadmap. However, it's a current limitation, as you said, in terms of not having this languages or any custom attributes available within the job profile builder at this point. So, but most of the customer, they're starting with the skills as an attribute. Okay, should all skill range be the same, using a scale of 1 to 5 with 3 as a midpoint? Can the basic skill reverse as a baseline for all to build upon? The skill library is excellent. Additionally, can an AI function be integrated across the modules? Okay, so again, the rating scales that we use for a skill or a competencies would remain same for all these skills. For instance, if the scale is defined as 1 to 5, let's say if it's a project management or it's in data analyst or any kind of a scale, it's going to be 1 to 5 scale that would be used. And also in terms of having the AI functionalities. So if you could see here, the AI function, if you have seen today, the skill library, there is a lot of AI functionalities that has been started coming from last few releases with the SuccessFactors, where you could see, there is a lot of AI functional. For example, depending, even if you look at the AI functionality, depending on the data captured within the continuous performance management, the activities and achievements today. Based on the AI recommendation, the skills get inferred within the growth portfolio, and also some of the other AI functionalities would be like, within your performance management, you can have your skills based, the goals created using the AI functionality. But however, to have this AI functionality to use SAP AI units is a prerequisite to consider with. Okay, on the data block slide, is it possible that you could be still working on role architecture and the skill library, etc., for some job families, but still rolling out the skill architecture for other families in the production? Can we add additional job families and skills in the background when one job family is launched, and we can have it available before we commence any rollout? Okay, yes, you can work. So again, when we look at those building blocks as well, its first recommended approach is to ensure you have a role architecture, because the identified roles within the organization is the roles within the organization is also what helps you to bring or add those skills within your organization. So for instance, how do we build the skill libraries really, or how do we know what are the skills that is important for our organization, right? The first step is also for identifying the skills required for a particular role. Yes, you can definitely start working simultaneously on those, but you can work on the skill library, because today you would have the role data within your system. Maybe you might not have the families and roles and a job code hierarchy built, but definitely you can simultaneously start working on. And as we also seen in terms of most of the customers, when they roll out for one particular job families having these skills and association, yes, you can definitely work on other families simultaneously. Maybe you might take a step back to roll out, but then you can definitely start adding or building the data for multiple job families while one is live. But always the recommended is, the approach is to first check within the test instance in terms of the what data you would like to have within your system, and also in terms of knowing when you're bringing the skills and etc., how many skills is something is important or required to effectively manage. And also you need to look at those aspects as well. But to answer your question, yes, you can do that. Okay, comments on journal entries about goals and skills are essential. Is there any option available at every step to provide a reminder for different level of assessments for the annual evaluation? Okay. Oh, journal entries about goals and skills are essential. Is there any options available at every step to provide a reminder for the different levels of assessment or an annual evaluation? This feature should be helpful, especially when identifying someone who may be struggling, allowing them to make adjustments in real time. Okay, at this point, there isn't any reminders as such, but yes, we can cross-check this and get back to you. Okay. So I know in terms of the languages that TalenTeam support, there is a lot of language that we support. I think John is typing the answer for that. I'll leave that for John now. And then what is the best practice for order of the other modules? So, well, it really depends in terms of, how do you want to do it? So basically, so when you have the architecture, you can in fact implement or have this integrated to all the other modules if required. For example, because you have an architecture, you have a skills data, you have a skill to role association, you can integrate with learning, you can integrate with performance, you can integrate with your succession and development. But it really depends on in terms of how do you really want to, what is that you're really trying to achieve. But one of the things to first start with is what we would like to talk about is, is to start with the learning first, because when you have the skills, it's really about, you need to ensure, once you have a skill, there should be a way for an employee to develop on a particular skills really. Okay, So I can see there are some questions which I'm leaving as it is because John is typing on it. And okay, if we move on to the next one, is there any access to external data on skills trend accessible through TAH or just internal? Is there any access to external data? Okay, currently at this point, it's only the data is accessible. Okay. Well, if you see in terms of the skills, right? So there was AI which used to do a skill inferencing depending on the external data as well. Like that is through integrating the Microsoft Teams with SuccessFactors. But however, that would be in the roadmap. SAP took a step back in terms of bringing the more stable approach of suggesting the skill inferences, but that would be there. So there is this external as well, external parameters that would be considered as well to assess or to perform the skill inferences. Okay, so is there any integration touch points with succession planning? So yes, so basically in terms of within the succession module, so by identifying, whenever you're trying to identify the candidate, identifying the incumbent for a particular position, you can now identify based on a skills criteria. So basically how you have an option to search or identify the right fit candidate based on a competencies. You can now use skills as a criteria and then have that identify the right incumbent and to add to that particular position really and develop him through, so which will potentially avoid any potential bias because we are identifying the skills based right incumbent for a particular position. Okay, so and then moving on to the next one, are you able to cluster skills in some way in talent intelligence of some parts of business, work planning, or interested with higher level of skills definition to different parts of business, trying to have a specific skilled person for a project? Okay, I think we have a couple of questions unanswered, but we would respond to you maybe after this call. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have to be a little mindful of everybody's schedule. So yeah, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much, Pavna, for sharing such valuable and clear insights. We do have a lot of questions, and thank you so much, John, for constantly answering them. We are keeping a note of all the questions that are unanswered, and we'll probably reach out to you on email so we can continue our chats there. I'd also thank all of you for joining us and for engaging throughout the session. We hope you found this discussion insightful. As mentioned earlier, the webinar recording will be shared with you by tomorrow latest, so keep an eye on your inbox. Thank you all once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thanks.